Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yesterday's headlines was that Geza had dropped in Chamisa and a few other opposition leaders to support the 31st March uprising, as he calls it. Now it turns out that he actually was exaggerating. Chamisa is saying that he has not spoken to anyone regarding this march. Well. I think it is important to explain why is it so important for Geza to get the opposition to support the 31st March uprising. Well, people must understand that unlike the 2017 military coup, where the people were asked to come out in support of the coup, when the coup had actually taken place, this is going to be different. As much as the army has shown, or at least some of the people in the army have shown, they support the Geza revolution by providing sanctuary to Geza himself, and more significantly, by stepping in and telling the police that if the protesters or the demonstrators should be in any way harmed, then the police will have to answer to the army. And as we heard from Police Commissioner Mutamba, he has publicly acknowledged that he's going to keep his ninja Riot Police thugs on the leash. The police know that in this particular protest, they do not want to be seen to provoke the army by beating up people. But that is as much support as the army can give Gaza. I think the army does not want to be seen to be in the forefront of this uprising. They do not want the 31st March uprising to be seen as another military coup. That is very important. They want this to be seen as a popular uprising by the ordinary Zimbabweans. That is their position. So now it's up to Geza and those around him to organize to make sure that people come out for the 31st of March in their hundreds of thousands to demand that Mnangagwa must go. That is easier said than done. Ordinarily, of course, if this was a public protest organized by the regime with endorsement of the government itself, the party will be bussing in people from all over the country to go to the various centers to hold the demonstration. But as we know, this is different. Mnangagwa and his ministers are not in support of this protest. And Mnangagwa is not going to protest that himself that he should be leaving. Of course not. What is happening here is typical of ZANU-PF. When there is factional fighting like this, you always find that the bulk of the ZANU-PF leaders and membership are sitting on the fence. It's uncomfortable, I agree, but it's the safe way to do. They particularly take that position and would want to be seen to be supporting the government of the day or whoever is wielding the power. This is a very strategic decision. In 2017, Mugabe thought he had the whole party behind him, at least a significant component of the party behind him, until it was clear that the military coup had succeeded. All of a sudden, he found himself being deserted. All those he thought were with him deserted him. Only a select few of the G40 members who were too close to Mugabe and knew they could never be trusted by the Lacoste, knew they had no choice but to run for their lives. The rest were sitting on the fence when it was clear Mugabe had lost. They supported the coup. How many ZANU-PF leaders were in the crowd on the 17th of November is debatable, but I don't think there were many. Because until Mugabe had signed the resignation letter, they were not too sure whether the coup was a success. What more so in this case here, where it's clear that the army itself has decided, or a significant part of the army have decided to sit on the fence. For ordinary members and many of the leaders, it makes sense to sit on the fence. So if the 31st March uprising is going to be seen as success, where will the multitude of people supporting it come from? They have to come from the opposition. This is why Geza is desperate to get Chamisa and others in the opposition to support the uprising. What Geza is having to deal with here is that he has got to accept he's dealing with Chamisa, who is elusive and doesn't say much. And as we know, other than the weekly verses, Chamisa does not say much less when there's action. He's not a man of action. I think many people will admit that when it comes to protest, he's rarely ever seen joining the protests and even supporting them verbally. He is so elusive. He is playing both sides. He wants to be seen to be supporting the protest, but in case it fails, he would change his position. Classical example is, of course, the 1st of August 2018 protest following the election that year, when a number of people were killed. As much as he himself had led in the protest, in that he claimed that the elections were rigged, ZANU-PF had rigged those elections. Although, of course, he had made his usual claim that the MDC alliance, as the party was then called, had stringent measures to make sure that ZANU-PF does not rig the elections. But when the results came, he was the first one to admit the elections were rigged. Never said anything about these so-called stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. He was just lying, of course. So in this particular case, although this issue of the Geza revolution has been going on since the 27th of January, Chamisa has hardly said anything of note regarding the revolution. And now he's coming out and saying that he has not been consulted on whether or not to support it. That should not come as any surprise at all. This is how Chamisa operates. He is always careful not to be seen to be doing nothing. On the other hand, he wants to maintain this distance. So what is going to happen? In this quotation, it doesn't come out right and saying it doesn't support the 31st March uprising. All he's saying is no one has approached him. As much as some people would want to say that they've talked to him, he's saying no one has talked to him. He's not saying that if somebody talked to him, you will not support it, or you will support it. It doesn't say that. Again, many people who know him would know that is typical language of Chamisa. Strategic ambiguity, as he called it, to the point of this is just confusion. He, even if the Geza company have not approached him yet, he can still come out and saying he is in support of the uprising, and he can start stating also his position on what he was hoping the uprising will achieve. In this particular case, one would expect, or people like me would expect him also to acknowledge that while he and his fellow MDC friends supported the 2017 coup, and they are the ones who told the people that yes, this was a step in the right direction, it was going to bring about meaningful political change in the country, he has got now to admit that it did not. Indeed, some people have been arguing that in supporting the military coup and the replacement of Mugabe with Mnangagwa, the nation was jumping from the frying pan into the fire. People like him would not, of course, want to be held to account for it, for having misled the people, for having conned the people to come out in the street in support of the coup, when all it was going to do is get them from the frying pan into the fire. He doesn't want to explain that he is not one to ever want to be held to account for anything. But I think in this particular case, it's an interesting development because now my guess would be he will support the uprising. Indeed, why shouldn't he? He supported the military coup in 2017. What is the difference? If anything, if this is a people, ordinary Zimbabweans uprising, it makes better sense to support it. If you supported a military coup, why shouldn't you support a civilian uprising? That didn't make any sense at all. The only problem, of course, is that in this particular case, as much as we are being told it's a civilian uprising, the reality is it is not. Like I said at the beginning, a significant part of the army is backing this uprising. And they've already stated what they expect if the uprising should succeed. They want Chiwenga to be president. And people like Geza himself have made it very clear that they want to be ministers, to be rewarded for their effort. And anyone who thinks that Chamisa and company would deliver any meaningful democratic change, I'll tell them now that they are being naive. If Chamisa and company failed to deliver even one token reform during the 2008 to 2013 GNU, when they hold the trump cards. Because you must remember that ZANU-PF was forced to go into that GNU by SADC. And SADC was the one who was basically saying, well, the purpose of the GNU is to implement democratic reforms. And yet, Chamisa and company failed to implement even one token reform. If they failed to implement reforms then, when they had the trump card, what hope is there that they'll do so now, when ZANU-PF holds the trump card? All the trump cards. None. So I'll come back to the point I made originally, that what we are looking at here is a situation where Geza 31st March uprising depends on the support of the opposition. And yet, he has got to admit it himself that the opposition are not dependable. Like it or not, Chamisa and his fellow opposition leaders, ever since the rigged 2023 elections, have lost a lot of public support or political credibility. Chamisa himself walked out of the party resigned, claiming that it had been infiltrated, and left and has been in hiding ever since. As much as the supporters have tried their best to get him to come out of retirement, people have really seriously doubted his commitment to delivering meaningful change in Zimbabwe. MDC, when you look at their track record, MDC Triple C's track record shows that this is a party in opposition party in all but name. They are ZANU-PF Team B. They have been playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. Yes, of course, they would see the opportunity to team up. If Team A is being divided, they will see an opportunity for them. If we were to side with one side of the divided A team, that will enhance their own power and influence. They will get more gravitating seats. Indeed, if they were to form the GNU as they promised to do, people like him would find themselves being prime ministers and a number of them being ministers. That's very attractive. So siding with the 31st March uprising is tempting for the opposition. Make no mistake about it. Whether they or not they will come out and they will succeed in getting people out is another matter. Chamisa conned the people to participate in the 2023 elections. He told them that I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. Triple C is going to win big. He knew he was lying. He knew ZANU-PF was rigging those elections. But he also knew that ZANU-PF was giving away a few gravity seats to those who participate. And that is the reason why he and his colleagues participated. This time, by supporting the 31st March uprising, they will enhance their own position. They will be telling people that this 31st March uprising will deliver the changes, knowing fully well that is a lie too. According to Geza, they've already endorsed Chiwenga as president. We have got to remember here that the opposition are after the few gravy train seats that ZANU-PF has been giving away. They've given up on any free, fair, and credible elections, and they don't care about the people, that the people should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. All they care about is which side is likely to give us a few more gravy train seats. And there's no doubt that the Chiwenga faction will be very grateful and will show their gratitude by giving them a few more gravy train seats. This is not to say, of course, that there are some opposition leaders who have already said that they support Mnangagwa 2030. And they, of course, would want to maintain their position in the hope that the 31st March uprising is a damn squid that will consolidate their own position as opposition leaders in Zimbabwe. Because make no mistake about it, Mnangagwa will reach out and reward them. One way of rewarding them, of course, is if he was to change the constitution to allow the MPs to stay beyond the 2028 date, when fresh elections are due. Those opposition leaders who are already in positions of power will be very glad with that. They don't want to face elections. They know that most of them will probably almost certainly lose those seats. So there is ambition and drive from both parties, from both sides. And at the present moment, we don't know what Chamisa is going to do. He hasn't been approached, but I'm sure Geza Company will approach him soon enough. And they'll make a deal. If he can con his brain dead supporters, just as he conned them to participate in the 2023 elections, Geza's 31st March uprising will be a success. If he fails, it's a damn squid. That is the reality. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join, and those who were also able to send your comments. Sorry, I haven't discussed any of the comments. I hope you'll be able to do it again at 6 o'clock UK time and 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Have a good day.